In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued a papal bull called Inter Caetera. This document had huge consequences. It declared that any lands not inhabited by Christians could be claimed by European Christian rulers.
This concept became known as the Doctrine of Discovery. It gave a green light for European powers to claim and exploit lands across the globe. This marked the beginning of a long and painful era for indigenous people worldwide.
The Doctrine of Discovery was rooted in the belief that European Christians were superior. It considered indigenous people as less than human. This dangerous ideology justified colonization and the seizure of indigenous lands.
European powers used this doctrine to legitimize their actions. They claimed ownership of lands that were already inhabited by indigenous communities.
This papal decree ignited a wave of exploration and conquest. European powers, driven by greed and a sense of entitlement, set sail for distant lands. They carried with them the Doctrine of Discovery, a document that would have devastating consequences for indigenous populations worldwide. Armed with the Doctrine of Discovery, European empires embarked on a mission to claim the world for themselves. They saw indigenous lands as ripe for the taking. Their goal was to extract resources and accumulate wealth. The Doctrine of Discovery served as their legal and moral justification.
European explorers landed on the shores of the Americas, Africa, Asia, and Oceania. They encountered diverse and thriving indigenous cultures. But the Doctrine of Discovery blinded them to the humanity of the people they encountered. They saw only land and resources to be exploited.
Treaties were often used to formalize land cessions, but these agreements were often made under duress. Many indigenous communities were coerced or tricked into signing away their ancestral lands. The Doctrine of Discovery cast a long shadow over these interactions, rendering them fundamentally unjust.
The Doctrine of Discovery had a devastating impact on indigenous populations worldwide. European powers, driven by greed, exploited indigenous people and their resources. They forced them into labor, introduced diseases that decimated their populations, and ripped apart their social fabrics.
Millions of indigenous people were displaced from their ancestral lands. They were forced onto reservations, often on land that was far less fertile and resourceful. This displacement led to cultural disruption, economic hardship, and the loss of traditional ways of life.
European colonizers implemented policies of assimilation, seeking to erase indigenous cultures and identities. Children were forcibly removed from their families and placed in boarding schools, where they were forbidden from speaking their languages or practicing their traditions. The goal was to civilize them, stripping them of their heritage.
The legacy of the Doctrine of Discovery continues to cast a long shadow on the lives of indigenous people today. Centuries of colonization, displacement, and assimilation have left lasting scars. Indigenous communities continue to face systemic racism, discrimination, and inequality.
Land dispossession is an ongoing issue. Many indigenous communities are still fighting to reclaim their ancestral lands, which are often held by governments or private corporations. The struggle for land rights is central to indigenous self-determination and cultural survival.
The trauma of colonization has had a profound impact on the health and well-being of indigenous people. They experience higher rates of poverty, unemployment, substance abuse, and suicide. Addressing these disparities requires acknowledging the historical context and implementing policies that promote healing and equity.
The fight for justice and recognition is far from over. Indigenous communities are resilient and continue to assert their rights and identities, working towards a future where their voices are heard and their lands are respected.
Section 5, a call for justice, reckoning with the past.
There is a growing movement for justice and reconciliation.
People are starting to understand the harms caused by the Doctrine of Discovery.
This understanding is leading to calls for action to address the historical wrongs inflicted upon indigenous populations.
Many are demanding that governments and religious institutions formally repudiate the Doctrine of Discovery.
They believe this is a crucial step towards acknowledging the illegitimacy of the doctrine and its devastating consequences.
Indigenous activists and allies are raising awareness about the Doctrine of Discovery and its ongoing impact.
They are challenging historical narratives that have perpetuated injustice and demanding accountability for past wrongs.
Section 6, Indigenous Resistance, Reclaiming What Was Lost. Despite centuries of oppression, Indigenous people have never stopped resisting colonization.
They have fought tirelessly to protect their lands, cultures, and rights. Their resilience is a testament to their strength and determination.
From the Standing Rock Sioux tribe's fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline to the Wet'suwet'en Nation's struggle against the Coastal GasLink pipeline, Indigenous communities are on the front lines of environmental justice movements.
Indigenous artists, writers, and musicians are reclaiming their narratives and sharing their stories with the world. Through their art, they are educating others about their history, culture, and struggles.
Section 7. Restorative Justice, a Path Forward. Restorative justice offers a path towards healing and reconciliation.
It focuses on repairing harm, rebuilding relationships, and addressing the root causes of injustice. It acknowledges the perspectives of both victims and offenders.
Truth and reconciliation commissions are essential for uncovering the truth about past wrongs and providing a platform for victims to share their stories. These commissions can recommend reparations and policy changes to prevent future injustices.
Land acknowledgements are becoming increasingly common as a way to recognize the traditional custodians of the land. While symbolic, they can be a starting point for deeper conversations about land rights, treaty obligations, and Indigenous sovereignty. Section 8. Building a better future towards reconciliation. Creating a just and equitable future requires a collective effort.
We must listen to Indigenous voices, learn from their experiences, and support their self-determination. By working together, we can dismantle the systems of oppression that continue to harm Indigenous communities.
Supporting Indigenous-led organizations and initiatives is crucial for empowering communities and addressing their unique needs. This includes supporting efforts to revitalize Indigenous languages, preserve cultural practices, and promote economic development.
Education plays a vital role in fostering understanding and empathy. By incorporating Indigenous perspectives into school curricula, we can challenge stereotypes, promote respect for diversity, and inspire the next generation to be agents of change.
Section 9. Conclusion, Hope and the Pursuit of Justice. The Doctrine of Discovery, a document rooted in racism and greed, has cast a long shadow on human history.
But even in the face of immense adversity, Indigenous people have shown incredible resilience, fighting for their rights and preserving their cultures.
The pursuit of justice requires acknowledging past wrongs, taking meaningful action to address them, and working towards a future where the rights and dignity of all people are respected.
By embracing the principles of restorative justice supporting Indigenous self-determination and amplifying Indigenous voices, we can create a world where the legacy of the Doctrine of Discovery is replaced by a future of healing, justice, and reconciliation. Please like, share, and subscribe for more videos. Always win!